Oh, we come see you tonight again. Thank you for this day you've given us, Father. Thank you for this. About Father, that we need for this church. Thank you so much, Father, for that. That we are to be ready. To be good shepherds of. Oh, yes, you bless all this time together.
Amen and amen. Well, good evening. How's everybody doing tonight? I see some faces from before, and I see some faces I don't think I saw before last time when Steve and I were here. My name's Gary Blaylock. I'm Territory Manager with U.S. Law Shield, which formerly was Texas Law Shield. I've been with the company since inception in 2009. I've been with the company for a little over 13 years now. They call me the OG, and that's not old guy either. It was actually stands for original gangster, and I didn't like that connotation either. I said, so how about just old guard or original guy? How about that? So that's kind of a joke within the company. But I became a member because 23 years ago, I was put in a situation at one of my businesses where I had to make a choice of force or deadly force. Nothing like this existed back in the day. And I chose force, and my ignorance of the law led to a warrant for my arrest, and I had aggravated assault charges filed against me with a deadly weapon. Had to go to court, had to fight him, spent over close to $4,000, $5,000 on attorney fees. And I got off half price because the attorney was my friend. I was his Harley mechanic. That's what I did for a living for almost 20 some odd years. I had a custom Harley shop, owned some nightclubs, paint and body shop over in Montgomery County. I sold everything. Oh golly, back in, see, Connor was coming on 5, so that would have been about 2005. I went to work for Law Shield in 2009, didn't retire, I'm a workaholic. But that's how I got out to doing these classes as well, because with U.S. Law Shield, I developed the active shooter program, and then Steve and I came up with the situational awareness program. But I'm going to tell you a little bit more about Law Shield too here in a minute. Just something new that I like to do, and this will ring with some of you. And I'd like to do this in my church classes anyway. And this is going to date me a little bit, but there was a gentleman in 1965 that was a radio talk show fella. And my grandfather made me listen to him every day at 11 o'clock. And I continued to listen to him for the rest of my life. And this falls in with where we're at in the world today. And some of you will recognize this voice, and if you don't, I'll tell you who it was. But in 1965, this guy came out with this particular radio talk.
If I were the prince of darkness, I'd want to engulf the whole world in darkness, and I'd have a third of its real estate and 4/5 of its population, but I wouldn't be happy until I had seized the ripest apple on the tree, thee. So I set about, however necessary, to take over the United States. I'd subvert the churches first. I'd begin with a campaign of whispers. With the wisdom of a serpent, I would whisper to you as I whispered to Eve, do as you please. To the young, I would whisper that the Bible is a myth. I would convince them that man created God instead of the other way around. I would confide that what's bad is good and what's good is square. And the old, I would teach to pray after me, Our Father, which art in Washington. And then I'd get organized. I'd educate authors in how to make lurid literature exciting so that anything else would appear dull and uninteresting. I'd threaten TV with dirtier movies and vice versa. I'd peddle narcotics to whom I could. I'd sell alcohol to ladies and gentlemen of distinction. I'd tranquilize the rest with pills. If I were the devil, I'd soon have families at war with themselves, churches at war with themselves, and nations at war with themselves, until each in its turn was consumed. And with promises of higher ratings, I'd have mesmerizing media fanning the flames.
Now, I'll leave you with that part of it. If you want to hear the rest of Paul Harvey, as he used to say, and here's the rest of the story, you can go to Google and just Google Paul Harvey, If I Was a Devil, 1965. But isn't that amazing what you just heard in that minute and a half? How close and how accurate that is to the world we live in today? It's crazy out there. And also following crazy and scary, it still puts us in a situation, whether it's church or as an individual. We have to be able to defend ourselves. We have to be able to protect ourselves against the crazy. And that's why I do what I do with U.S. Law Shield. That's why I go around, I talk to classes, and I speak at classes. because what we do is we provide legal defense for self-defense. And it used to be when I started, we had 3 program attorneys and an idea. That was it. And the pamphlets that we gave out. And it was a program for gun owners. Well, we've progressed over the years, and we've made changes, and we've improved. We've gone from 3 program attorneys in 2009. Today, we have over 60 program attorneys just in our great state of Texas. We have 264 independent program attorneys nationwide. We have U.S. Law Shield in 46 other states, 47 including our great state of Texas, and we have over 700,000 members in our Law Shield family today. And all we do now is provide legal defense for self-defense, not just for gun owners. 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, we implemented 3 new parts to the core program. These aren't add-ons. It's all part of the basic program. $10.95 a month covers all your legal defense criminally and civilly. No cap on the hours of legal representation. But now, not just gun or legal protection with a firearm or a weapon of sorts like that, we now cover our members with force or deadly force with any legal weapon. No longer a firearm. Baseball bat, golf club, pocket knife, fire extinguisher, 2x4, golf club, doesn't matter. Ball peen hammer. My favorite one is a cast iron skillet. I was teaching a class about a year ago. There was a little gal in the 3rd row back, and she smiled, and she gave me that example. And I said, well, ma'am, you're smiling. It sounds like there's a story behind that. She says, yeah, there is. She says, one morning I was cooking breakfast. I heard a noise in the dining room. I peeked around the corner, and this guy, a young fellow, had jimmied my dining room window and was crawling in the window. My sawed-off shotgun was in my bedroom on the other side of the dining room. I turned around, looked at the stove. There was that cast iron skillet I was cooking bacon in. I grabbed the skillet off the stove. I ran out in the dining room, and I threw that hot bacon and grease on him, and that boy started screaming. And then as he was in that position, crawling through the window, I ran up and I beat him over the head with the cast iron skillet and knocked him out. She says, so Mr. Blaylock, you just said we're covered with force or deadly force, criminally or civilly, represented, no cap on the hours of representation. So, and with any legal weapon. So am I covered if that boy would turn around and sue me for the grease burns or the damage, I busted his head open with that skillet? I said, yes, ma'am, you are. Whether you shoot them, whether you stab them, whether you beat them with a skillet, throw hot bacon grease on them, or run them down with your car, or use your hands, you are covered underneath our program. You're covered criminally and civilly because those are the 2 areas that you go through. Not only is it any legal weapon, also the core program covers all case appeals and accidental or negligent discharges too for that $10.95. Cheaper than a Whataburger meal. But the criminal part is the grand jury. All cases go before a grand jury. Grand jury reviews your case. They either no bill you or true bill you. No bill means you're justified in your actions. True bill means there's a question. The prosecutor now indicts you on criminal charges, and your case goes to trial in front of a judge and jury. But either way, you're going to have to use an attorney, right? You're going to need legal counsel. So that's why Law Shield was born, to provide that for you. And again, we're going to take you through that part of it. Also, if you get turned around and get sued civilly for wrongful death, or maybe maiming, dismemberment, or whatever the case, or the bodily injuries for that person, we cover you civilly as well. And there's no cap on the hours either. We spend a week on your case, we spend a year on your case. Does not matter. You pay no additional attorney fees. Okay, and that's all for $10.95 a month. I just went blank for a second. I've seen a criminal case take 3 years to solve, to settle in court, because the gentleman was true bill or no bill instead of true bill. I've also seen a civil lawsuit for wrongful death take over 3 years. Elderly woman shot and killed an intruder, turned out not to be an intruder. It was her very drunk, intoxicated neighbor. His buddies drove him home, took his keys, dropped him off out front. He staggers to the wrong front door because the subdivision was like cookie cutter houses. And in his drunken stupor with no keys, decides he's going to kick the door in. Grandma called 911. She called and made her filed a report. That was my mistake 23 years ago. I never called the police to let them know that I had to pull my weapon on 2 individuals. because I did not discharge my weapon, so I didn't think I broke any laws, and I was on my property, and it was after dark. So that's why I didn't make the phone call. So whether you pull the trigger or not, if you have to pull that weapon or use any type of force, always call the police. Always make that report, because that's going to make the difference of whether you're the plaintiff or defendant in the courtroom. And that's what led to my warrant for arrest and what cost me all that money. In today's world, just to get to the grand jury to get no bill, you're going to spend somewhere between $15,000 and $20,000. I don't want to go into my Dave Ramsey emergency fund. I don't want to go into my 401k, remortgage my house. That's why I have this program. I'm so passionate about it, and I travel around the state and around the country doing programs like this for U.S. Law Shield. Again, criminally and civilly, we take you from start to finish. Grandma's case took 3 years and 2 months. All she did was the basic Texas coverage, because that's what she could afford. She didn't travel. She didn't feel she needed bail bonds, and these are add-ons. They're very inexpensive. They're on the back of the brochure that I gave you. And she just had the core program. 3 years and 2 months. I asked one of the attorneys, I said, what would it cost Grandma if she didn't have this coverage? Said between $150,000 and $200,000. I had, actually Steve and I were talking to one of my clients in Beaumont, Texas, one of my gun ranges. He called me last week and told me he had a customer that was involved in an incident, carjacking. He had gone to the guy's range, he had been shooting. He had his rifle and ammunition in the back seat. Of course, he had his regular personal carry pistol on his person. He goes to Walmart, he gets out of the car. Evidently, this person had followed him from the gun range. I guess he's trying to jack the guy's car. He gets in the car. He's starting to take off. Of course, the car owner is holding on. And as they're taking off, he gets to his pistol and he reaches inside the car and he shoots the individual. Now, this young man, just a regular, average, hard-working fella. And I asked Drew, he says, well, here's the thing, Gary. He says, he's not a member of Law Shield. So what can you do? I said, well, it's not retro. We can't give him the coverage for free, basically the open-ended coverage like we do a member. But he can sign up for the program, because just by being a member, he gets free legal counsel. He can call in. If it goes too far, then he can also talk to the attorneys, and they'll represent him at a discounted rate. Not like they would just anybody off the street, because he's already a member after the fact. But again, going through all this to get to that point, as a member, he can call in and talk to a U.S. Law Shield attorney, independent program attorney, Monday through Friday, and ask legal questions pertaining to what he's involved in right now, or any legal questions that you want to talk pertaining to guns, gun law, traveling outside the state of Texas with firearms. All those questions in our wheelhouse we'll answer for you free of charge. That's all a perk of being a member. Now, if you have, of course, we were talking about phones earlier. While Steve's talking, if you'll go to your phone while we're doing this, and you'll go to your app store, and if you go in there and you type in U.S. Law Shield in the app store, what will happen is you'll come up with an app. Let me see if I can get there real quick. You'll come up with an app, and you'll hit load or install. And when the app comes up, it's going to look something like this. Now, there's also a perk built into this. You can hit become a member and start filling out all the information while we're doing this tonight. You can pick couples, single, monthly, annual, multi-state, bail bonds, minor child, hunter shield, gun owner identity theft. Any of those are all explained in there. You can pick whatever program you want, and then you're going to scroll through, you're going to verify your information. Then when you get to the payment page, you're going to put your payment information in there. But before you go all the way through and hit submit, right below the credit card information, the payment information, you will see a box, a block, a line that says promo code. This promo code is going to give you the first month for free. Won't cost you a dime this first month for the basic core program. Whether you do couples, singles, whatever, if you do annual, you're going to get that off of the annual fee. If you do monthly, then I'm just going to pick on the couple here in the front row. Y'all do monthly. Normally today, just for the basic Texas, it would be $61.80. You will not pay that tonight. You will pay that 30 days from now when it renews. Now, if you get multi-state or bail bonds coverage, you will pay that $5.90, which is $2.95 per person per program. But you'll get the first month for free. Also, when you do that app, in that app, you will also get Interstate Travel Guide, a digital travel guide for free. You'll also have When I Can Legally Shoot guide for free. At the bottom, you'll see a list of things. There'll be a calendar down there. You can see classes. You can also, the emergency hotline number is also in this app. I still say, even if you have the emergency number on the app, still go in and program the hotline number into your speed dial. And it's not coming up, but when you sign up, your card will come up on here. It'll have your name. When you refresh it in about 3 or 4 minutes, it'll have your name and your number. It'll go from black and white to red, white, and blue. And on the bottom corner of that, you'll see a red box in that below your card. That's the emergency hotline. You click on that box, it opens up, and you scroll up, and you'll see the phone number. You hit on that blue phone number, it dials directly into a hotline attorney. That is not an answering service. It's not a crisis center. It is an independent U.S. Law Shield program attorney. That's what makes us different from some of the competitors. And we were the first to start this kind of program. So you'll be talking directly to your attorney. In a deadly force situation like Jack Wilson in Fort Worth, our attorney was up on the northeast side of Dallas. Jack Wilson was on the southwest side of Fort Worth. An independent program attorney was dispatched to his aid, was there in an hour and 30 or hour and 40 minutes, and took care of everything from there with the police and all the stuff, made the statement, everything for him. So that's how our program works. If you have other questions, you can ask me at the end. But again, the basic program, $10.95 a month, you get the first month for free. You can read about the add-ons. I do suggest bail bonds expert witness because that provides you with a $50,000 bond to get out of jail. Multi-state coverage covers you in all 50 states. Anywhere I travel in the U.S., because I have everything. I'm an avid hunter. I have multi-state. I have bail bonds. I even have this coverage for my kids. I pay for their coverage because, you know, my son is just now re-enlisted in the Marine Corps. He's getting promoted to sergeant, but they still don't pay sergeants that much money. So I cover my son, and I have him on multi-state because he's stationed in California. And my attorney's called the Communist Republic of California. But I have to go out there in about 10 days because he's getting married, and my wife and I have to fly out there. So if I would be put in a situation in California where I'd have to defend myself and I use a pocket knife or whatever, I'm fully covered because of any legal weapon. So that's about Law Shield. And all you have to do is you go through the app, you sign up. When you come back to the pew that I'm sitting in back there, I'm going to give you a couple other gifts too, because you're going to get a gunshot wound course tonight. It's a 3-hour online class. I call it How to Stop the Bleed. And we were talking last time about active shooter, how to apply a tourniquet, how to pack a wound, how to make a seal for a gasping chest wound. All of that is in that video. It's 3 hours. You do it right from the comfort of your home. If you're an individual, you'll get one. If you're a couple, you'll get two. You can have a date night and do active shoot or do a gunshot wound course on a date night. How about that? That sounds romantic, doesn't it? Popcorn, I don't know about that. But it's a very good class. It will teach you how to save someone's life, if not your own. And then you're going to also get the Gun Law Bible. That's what we call it. Texas Gun Law, Armed and Educated. I'm going to give you a card. It's like a postcard. It has a QR code on it. You scan that, like scan it with your tablet or whatever, and it downloads that 438-page book right onto your device, and you can just sit there and read it like Nooks or whatever they used to call those things, online books, computer thing. But anyway, with that said, just think about that. Come up to me at the end of class tonight, and I'll give you your gifts for signing up. Just need to see the card where you signed up. This is Mr. Steve Gage. Steve and I have been doing this for about 5 years now. We've been on the road a lot this week. I told Steve, I said, we haven't spent this much time together in a long time. Our wives are going to get jealous. But Steve Gage is a former HPD officer. He's a retired homicide detective is what he's retired as. Steve has retired 30 years from HPD. He was also an active shooter trainer and T-close trainer with HPD as well. And again, like I said, we travel across the state of Texas. Maybe one of these days we'll travel across the country, take our show on the road. But Mr. Steve Gage, will you come up and talk to these people about situational awareness tonight?
Well, good evening, and thank y'all for coming out this evening and spend your evening with us. Real quickly, how many of you were with us with the active shooter seminar? Okay, good, great. Well, We're discussing this evening situational awareness, but we're also going to open it up to questions in regards to questions you may have with active shooter as well. Some of you that attended the last one may have thought of a question that you would like to ask. We certainly want to do that as well. As Gary mentioned, I'm a retired Houston police officer. Majority of my time that I was there, I was in homicide, also was a training officer, and am currently a firearms instructor at a range in Spring, Texas. I've been there for the last 10 years as a firearms instructor at the range there in Spring. Now, I'm going to ask, if you would this evening, please hold your questions till the very end. Allow me to get through the material. Then I'll be glad to come back to the questions. Your questions are what stir the conversations, so please don't hesitate, but allow me to get through the material as we move forward. Questions and topics we're going to talk about this evening are preparation plans, alarms and security systems, weapons and firearms training, and then we're just going to touch briefly on some legal topics, because one of the things Gary and I are involved with as well is we do these in conjunction with the legal staff too, with one of the attorneys. They have a portion, and then I'll come in behind them and talk about the meat and potatoes, the stuff that's on the streets out there. But I've heard a whole bunch of the information that they have, and we'll talk about a couple of those topics as we finish out. Threat, vulnerability assessment. That's what the bad guy does when they determine whether they are going to burglarize your home. And believe me, now some of this may be relevant, some of it may not, but in general, this is what these guys do. And we know this because we've spoken to them. Part of the time that I was with the department, I worked a part-time job in a neighborhood outside of downtown Houston, in the Heights. And while I was there, we were doing regular neighborhood patrol. We were getting hit by a group, an organized gang out of southeast Houston that were burglarizing residential homes in our neighborhood and the neighborhood beside us. So we set up surveillance. We ended up breaking the gang and arresting 5 of them that were involved in this. But what we determined, and one thing I've noticed over time is, if you ask them, bad guy, they're in the handcuffs in the backseat of the patrol car, if you ask them, they'll give you the answer. You just have to ask. It's amazing. One of the guys we had back there, he described himself as a professional burglar, but this was his 3rd arrest. And I thought, all right, well, have you ever considered maybe a new job? Just, you're not very good at this one, being the 3rd arrest, and he was going to do 12 years. But anyway, I asked him as we were going through, I said, what do you look for in a residence before you end up doing the burglary on it? It was interesting. It's real interesting to hear these guys, what they look for when they drive by homes to burglarize them. First and foremost, they look at your trash. And they do that on Mondays. Why on Mondays? Monday morning is normally when most people's trash pickup is. So they drive by, and they're not looking at taking your 75-inch TV that you have the big box beside the trash can there. They're looking at the quality of stuff that you have. They're also looking at your home to see if you have some type of security system. Are there any cameras present, the ring system, all these different, you have the little placards out in the yard that say so-and-so alarm company, little window stickers and stuff like that. They're looking at those to determine, am I going to do this house, or am I going to go 3 houses down that doesn't have that kind of stuff? Now, I found it interesting. This professional burglar I was talking to in the back seat, he said there is a no-go deal that you may have on your house or at your house, that they will not go into your yard if you have that on your fence. And that is the beware of dog sign. He told me, he said, I will not, if you have by the way, they sell those at the hardware store, but whether you have a dog or not, he said, I don't know what's behind that fence. I'm not going to go back there because Cujo could be back there and I don't know it. And all of a sudden, I'm in the backyard with this man. He said, I'll go 3 doors down where they don't have that and go through. So just feel for thought in this agenda. He said that whole different thing. Now this group out of Southeast Houston worked in there were either 3 or 4 every time we observed them. And we watched them through cameras that were on homes and stuff. And what they would do is they would go to the front door. One would stay out in a vehicle outside with the vehicle running. The other 2 or 3 would approach the front door. They'd knock on it. And if you didn't answer, they would look in through one of the windows that might be, where they could see into the home to see if they see any movement or anything. If they didn't, they would go around to the back of the house and they'd kick the door in, back door, go into the master bedroom, the master closet only. Now, these guys were very specific for what they were looking for. They were looking for silver, gold, cash, jewelry, and a carryable safe, one that they could pick up and carry out and run out. What we found out later is they had a fence that they were selling this stuff. They would go buy cell phones that were on the counter in the kitchen. One went by a purse that was on the kitchen, laptops, all this kind of stuff. They went by because they were looking for those 4 things. When we broke this ring, they had 2 warehouses in Southeast Houston, those mini warehouses. Both of them were full of stolen property in there. I mean, this was a big a gang that was going through doing all this stuff out there. Now, let's define real quickly, because I get this quite often. Friends and stuff like that will go, man, we went out to dinner and we came back and our house was robbed. Okay, well, your house was burglarized. A difference between a burglary and a robbery is one is personal and one is not. Burglary is when you're gone, they kick in your door, they go in, they take your stuff. There's no confrontation. A robbery is just the opposite. Now, it can be a robbery or it can be an aggravated robbery. What changes that is the use of a weapon in that. Even a robbery can be, give me something, make a fist, obviously robbery. I produce a knife, obviously aggravated robbery. Now, there's also another one. It's called home invasions. People, you hear quite often about home invasions. Now, it's been my experience in researching a lot of these and seeing a lot of these on the department. I believe specifically that home invasions are normally targeted. By that I mean a home invasion, for the most part, is done. They have what's called stash houses, where narcotics have been bought, where drugs have been bought, where human smuggling is. These types of places, they're called stash houses. Generally, they know money's there or narcotics is there, and one gang runs against another gang and they kick in the door, or there's an informant they're trying to stop, or a rival gang member, something like that. So for the most part, home invasions, and this bears it out in the statistics, are generally targeted. So that's the third step: robbery, aggravated robbery, and home invasions. Now, inside your home, you can prepare yourself to defend against somebody that is breaking in from the outside. I call it your home court advantage, because you know where everything is. At night, if you have night lights or you have a light on that you keep on in the home, which I suggest you do, backlight the bad guy, not yourself. Keep it up towards the front door. That's where they're going to come in first, back door second. But if you're going to have them in that area, backlight them, not you, where you are backlighted in a situation like that. Find a defendable position in that home. There may be something in your home that you can get behind, and it makes it a very defendable position. If you have a 2-story home, the most defendable position in a 2-story home is the top of the stairs. I mean, you can really defend well. It's called the funnel. They've got to come up the stairs, come in there. You've got them in that funnel, and it's a very defendable position if you do have an upstairs in your home. Also consider a safe room, especially if you have young children, or in my case, grandkids, and something like that. Take this into account. They're very young. You've got an intrusion alarm. It goes off at 3 o'clock. not only is it a panic for us, but you can imagine if you're 5 or 6 or 7 in a situation like that, have some kind of plan. Have a safe room. Generally have it where they're close to it or they're in the safe room. For instance, if you have a separate arrangement where you have 2 bedrooms here, master bedroom, living room in the middle, never put your plan in play where you're going to have them come to you. You go to them. If there's any passing in that living room, you want it to be you and not them coming across the room, just so you can minimize chaos in a situation like that. Safe room ideas, bathrooms are good safe rooms. You have, water, toilet facility, first aid. A master closet is also, if you have an interior master closet where there's no windows in there, there's one way in and out, it's a very defendable position in there. Remember, for the most part, you will definitely have a weather issue, much more so than you would ever have in kind of invader or anything. So just having a good safe room and putting some thought into it and having a plan for it is a good way to defend. Same way with neighbors. You have a good neighbor link. For instance, a vehicle pulls up into your driveway and they come out and knock at the door. Your neighbor, if you're on the phone to them, is at a very safe distance to be able to evaluate what's going on out there. They can get some really, really good information for officers as well when the people pull off, if they did something, whatever the case may be, because they're from a safe vantage point there. They get license plate, how many, direction, color, car, clothing, all those things that are really pertinent to us as police officers out there. They can do that from a safe distance. Plus, it's a good thing to do with your neighbors anyway, because it feeds off of one another back and forth as you go through. Alarms and security systems are great, really, really good at giving you real-time information. I mean, they are really, really advanced in their technology nowadays. But remember this, they're not there to stop. A burglar alarm or a security camera won't stop or prevent someone from breaking into your home, but it will give you a good heads up. I mean, you can see this stuff in real time. Statistically, the FBI says that 40% of burglaries that occur, the burglar entered either through an unlocked door or an unlocked window. 40%, that's a high percentage of people that actually forget. Also, they said the time for burglaries are Monday through Friday from 10 in the morning till 3 in the afternoon. Now you think, why is that? Well, a lot of folks are at work, they're gone. They're hoping that that home, again, is vacant and they can get in and they can get out. What we found interesting with our group that we were surveying in the area before we broke the gang out there was there were a couple of times we actually in those homes had a confrontation from a homeowner that was inside the home with the bad guys that kicked in the back door. What happened is in the neighborhood we had a lot of widow women or mothers that were home with their children, and they were afraid to answer the door when somebody strange was knocking on it, so they wouldn't say anything. Well, bad guys thought, well, nobody's home, nobody's saying anything. Went around to the back, kicked in the door where the residents were in there. Fortunately, these were burglars and not worse, and so they ran the other way and got out and got away in a situation like that. But again, this gives you the ability, these cameras and alarm systems, to assist you in, because now I'm not FBI will quote all, a burglar alarm, it takes 8 to 12 minutes for response time for police get there. Response time is, it depends on where you are. Some rural areas, it may be sometime today. And some of these other places, like in the middle of Houston, where you've got, maybe an officer 2 blocks away or 3 blocks away or something like that, response time can be very, if I'm sitting there writing a report and an alarm drops 2 blocks over, my response time might be less than a minute to get there. So I don't think a lot of that's factored in. They don't take a whole lot of that into account. But FBI says 8 to 12 minutes on an alarm for the arrival for the police to get there. And with the group that we broke, remember, we had the guy in the car outside with it running. Well, he also had a clock running. He had a stopwatch going on And you could hear him, he would say 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes, and they were on a clock because they knew if the alarm was silent, that they had a certain amount of time that they had inside your home to get in and get out. And at 4 minutes, he was barking. You need to get go. He'd be hollering at them. So these guys are, very professional on something like that. Front door, and get this, now nowhere near where we are, but there are actually people in this country that in July and August, which are the two biggest months for burglaries, residential burglaries, July and August are the 1 and 2 biggest months in the country. There are people in this country that actually during July and August have screen doors open and windows open with screens on them during the summertime. Who'd have figured? It's certainly not in our area, but they do. They had that. They have those in there. Well, a lot of them just enter through because you get busy. All of a sudden, you jump in the car and you leave, and the back door screen is all that's between that and a burglar breaking in. They said that's one of their big issues. Front door, number one. Back door being number two as to the entrance into your home. Believe it or not, garage was number three. Now, if you're that guy that has your garage door opener in your truck, in the driveway out there, shame on you. Because they will break into your car, get your garage door opener, open your garage, and get in through the garage door that is generally unlocked because we got a garage door. They have to get the open. So if you are, just kind of place it maybe in an area that they got to struggle to at least find where that might be to be able to get into the home like that. The front door, when they kick it in, the door is not the issue of them being able to, it's the door jamb itself. That's what gives way when they kick that door and knock that door in. We tell people all the time, fortify that with longer screws in the striker plate and stuff like this. I remember many times the SWAT team, the Houston SWAT team, ran most of our murder warrants because they were high profile, the bad guys were, and so the SWAT team would run the murder warrants that we had out there. So I sat in on many of the briefings with the SWAT commander and the SWAT team as he would, they would draw up all the plans to go through and this, that, and the other. And I remember specifically this SWAT commander that said, if people ever got smart and realized that when we hit that door, and they have that Moe, that steel bar that they hit it with, they hit it in the, where the doorknob is and the door gives, well, they're running and they hit that and the momentum carries and the door goes this way as they go through it, everything's moving in that direction. He said if anybody ever got smart enough to really turn that from a door that opens in like that to open out, how complicated it would be to compromise it and something like that. Well, my understanding is schools have done that. Many schools, believe it or not, and Uvalde was one of them, that had the doors that don't open into, you have to actually, from the outside, it's different. You have to push in. So you don't have that momentum and that ability to be able to knock it in and come in because it opens out like this rather than opening in. And I remember him saying, how hard and how difficult that would be if they ended up doing it. Well, I found out Uvalde did and does have that and did have that sadly on that day as well down in Uvalde. But the other thing is your sliding glass doors. Number 2 location for people coming in. But a simple dowel rod in that guide down there can stop people from getting into and I remember this young lady with 2 kids, single mother. She had these guys that were on her back porch quite often. She had a camera. She would call prowlers, and we'd come out there, and they were already gone when we got there. And I noted that. I said, look, you've got a sliding glass door here. She was and it was kind of an older place, so you could almost shake the door or the handle on the sliding glass door and rattle it so that the latch on it would break. So she ended up we came back, and by the way, we talked her into the Beware of Dogs sign too on her fences as well. She had that, didn't have a dog, but she had that sign on there. And she put that simple dowel rod in there, and that eliminated her and gave her a peace of mind knowing that they're not going to be able to jam that door. If they were able to compromise the lock, they still weren't able to come in. Door chimes. Door chimes are another thing. Great, 10:30 at night, you're in bed and you're reading a book and all of a sudden the door chime goes off. Well, it's reason for alert. It shouldn't do that. So now all of a sudden, you need to investigate something like that. I will tell you this, and door chimes the same way. The majority of alarms that go off are false. It's like 90% of alarms are false in something like that. Here's what we advise the residents in the neighborhood to do, especially if it's just you and your spouse. You're at the house there, and your intrusion alarm goes off at 3 o'clock in the morning. We advise them to stay where they are. Stay where you are. Have us come to you and not you, because you're not trained to be able to secure a room by room by room as you go through. There's a technique that you have to learn, and there's no sense in you being because remember, overwhelmingly, the number of alarms are false. And majority of the time when we arrive there, we can determine whether it's a true alarm or false alarm by is there damage, did they kick in the door, did they break a window, whatever. And the last part is we're going to put the dog in, because the dog's going to eliminate 99% of the house that quickly. He's going to determine whether there's a live scent and he's going to go right to it, or there's going to be no scent and we're going to realize wind blew the door open. Along those lines, your little fur baby there that's with you will also do the same thing. That dog will run to wherever that threat is, whether it's an ankle biter or whatever the case may be. It doesn't matter. It's going to go right to wherever that person is. Now, it'll be like ours. It'll be a standoff. They'll be 6 or 8 feet away, but they're going to be doing this that whole time, and it's going to eliminate where these are. But we just encourage everybody to stay where they are, allow us to come to you, and we secure everything from where that front door is all the way to you. So it makes it just so much better to be able to do it that way. Now, firearms weapons training in defending ourselves. Some of this, for those of you that were with us during the active shooter seminar, are similar, because the techniques, whether you're defending yourself in your family in an active shooter incident or whether you're defending yourself in your home, a lot of it is the same steps, same procedures that you would go through in both cases. So we're going to touch the ground with pretty much the same information, just with a different twist, because it is in the home or it is in your vehicle or whatever the case may be. The 2 questions I get the most in an active shooter class is, the first one is, what is the best way to defend my family with, and what is the best way to keep them safe? And that is 2 parts. The first part is have a plan and review it. Have a plan. Something in mind that you can assist your family with. Have that in mind, review it often. And the second is weapons training. Up your skill set in your ability to use a firearm, if that's the route you're going to go to defend your family with. I read a statistic just recently released in July. It said that from January 1st to July 1st, 6-month period in there of 2023, that in that 6 months we have had the most mass shootings ever recorded in United States history in 6 months. If you combine 2022 with 2023, a 2-year period, it's the most that have ever been recorded in United States history in a 2-year period. And folks, we're only 6 months through 2023. We haven't even finished 2023 yet. And yet it's a record in that situation. And Gary and I do these in our class. How many of you feel safer than you did 2 years ago? We've got open borders. We've got all kinds of things that we have to prepare to help and defend our family with. And I believe you do that with an action plan. And that action plan, I believe, is in 3 parts. The first is our awareness. more specifically, our situational awareness. The number one survival skill to assist you till the next day is your survival or your situational awareness. Situational awareness kind of breaks down into a definition of your alertness to the potential threat that may be around you that you visualize. By that I mean situational awareness. My dad used to call it having your head on a swivel. You're just aware around you of everything that could possibly be a threat. At our church in Willis, we're blessed with a lobby up in the front. I could stand in the lobby sanctuary behind us, and as far as I could see to the left, as far as I could see to the right, straight ahead, I can see. If a threat is quickly coming from the parking lot towards the church, that situational awareness buys me time and distance to consider options. Maybe I see that threat or a perceived threat heading that way. Maybe it's time to get more hands on deck. 6 arms are better than 2. I get a few more hands there. Or maybe it's quick, maybe it's imminent. My only option is to maybe get behind cover to get a good tactical position to be able to defend from. Whatever that may be, my situational awareness buys me the ability to do that. Kind of breaks down, and this is kind of where it really, you're on your way from Lake Charles to Beaumont. It's 1:30 at night, you're on I-10, you're coming down, all of a sudden you look down, you're on empty. And you're having to pull off of I-10 into a truck stop somewhere to get gas at 1:30 in the morning in a very unfamiliar place late at night like that. I can tell you, your heightened awareness or your alert or your situational awareness is as keen as you can get because it's right on, spot on, because everything around you, you're keeping eyeballs on. And again, that head is on a swivel literally in a situation like that. Step number 2, the second part is our preparation plan, what we just talked about, having a plan, exit strategy. If you happen to be in a restaurant, know where your exits are. Have an exit strategy with that preparation plan. We talked about it in the home, but if you're out or whatever the case may be, consider that as well. Another thing, this is a great thought, and we tell the safety teams in the active shooter seminars in church, this is a great step to consider as part of your plan. And that is, we noted in the Columbine High School shooting in 1999 in Colorado, the killers began in the kitchen. And once they started in the kitchen, they walked from the kitchen to the library, which is where it ended in the high school there. But there were hall cameras that caught the killers walking from the kitchen to the library. And as they were walking the hallways, as they were walking down the hallways, they had their guns positioned like this. And as they were walking, they were pulling off rounds as they walked down the hall. They were going through sheetrock into the classrooms. If you were upright in that position and in that time, only thing standing between you and that bullet is sheetrock, and it's not going to stop. One of the best things you can do as a safety team and just as a family is realize to get on the ground, flattened out, proned out, because if you're up, there is a potential you can be a victim. We saw it in Columbine. If you're proned out on that ground, I've got to seek you out as a victim as I move through there. You lower your profile. I know a lot of folks, the first thing they think of is run. If it's a bad situation, run. That can be, especially in a big setting like a church, potentially a restaurant, all of a sudden 6, 8 of us ball up at that exit because we can't all get out at the same time. One round can take 3 or 4 victims because of the movement of that round, how fast it's moving out of that barrel. And if you're on the ground and you're under the pew here or something like this, literally got to seek you out. You lower your profile. It's a great thing to consider as part of your preparation plan as you move forward. And then the third step is training. Very, very important part, training. I believe training breaks into 3 different groups, no necessary order. The first being, if you are not familiar with a handgun or you haven't shot in a while, go to the range. Practice at a range. What a range does is it builds your confidence, especially if you haven't shot in a while. Because what's going to happen is you're going to go to that range, and you're going to get that lane, and you're going to pull that gun, and you're going to start shooting, and you're going to swear somebody stole your gun because you could not shoot that poorly. Well, I got, all of a sudden those rounds are going over. Who's shooting over there, my target? I will tell you, as you continue, you'll get back. It is perishable, but it does come back, and you get, what a range does is it gives you the ability to work on your fundamentals, your grip, your stance, all these different things to build a good platform and build your fundamentals. And pretty soon you're going to start knocking the middle of that target out, and you're going to build that confidence. You're going to think, yeah, this is pretty good. I'm doing much better. Second step, take a defensive tactics course. Challenge yourself, up your skill set. Do something that maybe you've never done before. I mean, how many of you have ever shot with your offhand? Okay, a good number. Good number. But a lot of folks have never shot. I'm left-handed, have never shot with their offhand or my right hand in a situation like that. It's good to practice that at the range, because what happens if I take a round in my left shoulder here? All of a sudden this left side, my strong, dominant side, is out of the mix. I now got to convert that gun over to my right hand and keep that threat off of me and my family. It's good to practice that, maybe at the gun range before we have to get into the game. So that gives you the ability to be able to do that in these tactical handgun classes, multiple threats, because you always think in terms of 1+ when you're in tactical training. It's always 1+. They run in groups. Nice to maybe address more than one target that's stationary in front of us. So it gives you the ability to be able to up your skill set. Another thing, if you conceal carry, whether that be on you in your purse, ladies, or something like that, always, always, always carry a second magazine. Well, hold on, Steve. I've got 15 rounds in this gun. If I can't do it in 15 rounds, I'm going to throw it at them. Okay, I hear you. I understand. Okay. But what if, unbeknownst to you, that magazine had been dropped one too many times at the gun range and it bent? You've got it in that gun. All of a sudden you have to get to it. You start to use it, 1, 2, and then it jams on that third round. It doesn't feed because that magazine is bent. I've got to get it out, rip it out, put a new one in, and get back into the mix. It's always better to have more than enough than not enough. Call time. There are no timeouts, I don't think, in that world out there. So always, always have a second magazine. And ladies, if you carry in your purse, and that is going to be the way that you're going to carry your firearm to defend your family with, consider this. If you have your firearm in your purse and you have to get to it or you have to use it, and you stick your hand in your purse and that threat is coming at you, and you've got your hand inside your purse with that hand on that gun waiting for that threat on top of you and no other options out there, and you fire that gun and it's a semi-automatic handgun, you're going to get one round off. Because inside your purse, a semi-automatic handgun has to cycle back, kick the brass out, pick up another one, come back. It will not have enough room inside that purse. It will foul. It won't. That round will not extract out there. You have a stovepipe inside that purse. Option is a revolver. Shooting a revolver inside that purse and having your purse gun being a revolver, that cylinder rolls. So it's going to fire 5 or 6 times, however many you have in that revolver every time. You'll get off 5 or 6 rounds if you decide to use that as your way to defend your family with. Again, in that case, always have a second magazine or a speed strip, some kind of ammo source for that revolver as you go through. Training. The last part of training is dry firing with a safely unloaded weapon. This is a huge one because it costs you nothing, just your time. The way I do it is I go into the master bedroom, I take my gun out, always take the magazine out first, ammo source goes out first. Then I account for that round in the chamber and kick it out. and I slide lock my gun on the bed there with the gun slide locked back and no magazine in it, laid on the bed. Then I go to the magazine, and I take all the bullets out and put them in a plastic baggie, take all the live ammo into the master bedroom, close the bathroom, close the door, come back in. Now I have a sterile environment. There's no live rounds anywhere in that room, and I can practice dry firing with a safely unloaded gun many, many times, because not many people carry open carry. I mean, I've only seen a couple ever that open carry that have their holsters on the outside. 90, probably 8% of us have what's called concealed carry, or you have a garment. Well, you're going to, in order to get to that gun, you're going to have to get that garment up out of the way to get it out of the holster. Let's practice that. Let's practice that, because it can be tough. I mean, you're going to have to you're going to have to clear that garment up high enough. You're going to have to grip that gun. You're going to have to rack it out and get it out of the holster. Let's practice that part of it. Also, when a gun goes dry and there is no more ammo, it slide locks back. I've got to be able to get that empty magazine out, get that new one in, put it in, and drop the slide and get back in. These are things that you can practice and do in your safely unloaded dry firing situation. You can practice doing that kind of stuff as you go through. Along that line, concealed carry. We had a handgun class at our range in spring that we were instructing. There were 10 people in the class, and I asked the class this question. I said, how many of you here, now this is a handgun class, how many of you here in this class know what printing is? Printing. 7 out of the 10 had never heard of it. 7 in the handgun class did not know what printing is. For those of you that may not know what printing is, it is outlining your shirt. You can, if you look and you watch somebody, you may be able to pick up that there's a bulge on their side or something like that, that they may have a weapon that's concealed by a shirt. I call them fat man shirts. That's what I put those over to try and cover up as much as you can of your weapon. But it is covering your weapon, and it's called printing. And people, most gun people, can quickly pick that up. That guy's printing over there, or that guy over there. You can kind of, with a good trained eye. But this was a handgun class. So, with that being said, I believe, and without a doubt, and I've heard this so many times before, your number one priority in concealed carry is not to be concerned about printing. It's all about accessibility. You have to have that weapon where you can access it as quickly as you can to get it in, drive that gun into that mix, because in handgun preparation and classes and stuff like that, there's one of two ways. You're either a deliverer or you're a receiver. And we all want to be on that delivery side and not on that receiving side. How you do that, how you're able to do that, is the basic fundamentals, one of which is to get that garment out, peeled away, get that gun, drive it, and move that gun in that. And you do that through as much preparation as you can. Dry fire. Now understand, dry firing does not replace live fire. You have to put that gun in your hand. You have to pull that trigger to feel what that gun does in your hand. But it is a great training aid in a situation like that. Special forces troops, law enforcement, man, we do things so. We determine so many times that the best plan in the world that you have on paper, and I've seen a bunch of them, goes out the window as soon as the first shot's fired. And then the way you survive is what's called muscle memory. It's the way you've done it every time, and you're going to fall into that in those stressful situations, because I've done it 8,000 times this way. I'm going to do it that way this next time as well, and it's muscle memory. That's what you're developing. The 3,000 times that you're going to pull that shirt up, get your hand on that gun, and drive that gun out of the holster. You're practicing that, where in the situation that it might go dark on you, you know how you're going to respond. and that's how you're going to respond. Training gives us skills. Skills give us options. Now, if you think about that for just a moment, you break that down, we are training to gather a skill set. That skill set, hopefully when we need it, that skill set will give us options to be able to help us as we survive through that. Staging of firearms. What this is staging of weapons inside your home. It's just my wife and I. Our grandbaby's 16 months old, got a little ways to go before she's going to be in the home where we have to consider other options. But we have staged firearms in our home. What that is somewhere in the very close proximity to the back door, same way in the front door, there is a firearm accessible to either my wife or I. They are her guns. She shoots them. She's comfortable with them. I'm easily adaptable to either one of them. But they're there because the rest of our guns are locked away in our gun safe. If something were to happen, I'd have to get up off the couch, or she would, either one, run to the gun safe, get it open, get one into play. By having staged firearms inside the home, you have cut that response time greatly. I mean, you have really, really dropped that response time down because somebody hits the door, kicks the door, knocks on the door, whatever the case is, you've got accessible to you very quickly a weapon if you need to. Now, the deal killer in this is obviously if you have young children or grandchildren in the home, you definitely don't want this scenario to play out. What I would tell you instead of is magazines. Magazines, having magazines in those two spots, and here's why. Now, it would have to be a like gun. In other words, if it's a Glock 48, 9mm, you want two Glock 48s in the front and in the back there. But here's what happens, and have seen this so many times as a homicide investigator, because we did all officer-involved shootings, on duty or off duty, involving Houston police officers in Houston, Harris County. And I remember a officer specifically, when I got out there to investigate the on-duty shooting, as I walked up to him and asked him, I said, "Officer, how many times do you think you fired?" He said, "Man, I think maybe 3 times. And I'm holding a slide lock gun back, and I'm standing on about 8 shell casings that are under me. What happens, folks, is it's called tunnel vision. You get in this, and you don't know. You don't know how many times you have fired. By having those magazines maybe in play, if something were to happen, you're in that defendable place inside, and you're not sure, you can reach up, grab that magazine, drop the other one, put one in. You've now topped off, and you know how many you have at that point. It may be an option. Here's another thing I hear quite often. Okay, I've got very young children, and I have my gun on my nightstand. I'm very concerned about how I can secure that gun at night in case my little ones wander into the bedroom and want to play with my gun while I'm asleep late at night. Now, we used to hear this from officers too, that in the same situation, they'd have their gun on their nightstand. So some of our trainers kind of came up, our handgun trainers kind of came up with a couple of options. And here's the 3 that I felt like made the most sense. And that is a level 2 holster. Level 2 holster, you could put that firearm in that level 2 holster. And a level 2 holster, you have to do something to release a lock on it to be able to pull that gun out. Option number 1. The second option was to take the magazine out, have the gun slide lock back with the magazine beside it. Most young children wouldn't be able to operate, and certainly not without awakening you, because they're fiddling around with it trying to figure out how to get the magazine in. Then you've got to drop the slide. So chances are it'd probably awaken you. And then the third option is, and I'm not a real big believer in this, I kind of like option number 1 or 2 a whole lot better, but is putting the magazine in and not chambering around. By that I mean, you put the magazine in, they grab the gun off your nightstand, they can pull the trigger all day and it's not going to fire because hadn't been around chambered into the slide. Definitely like 1 and 2 better, but it gives you 3 options to consider if you have young children or your son or daughter has young children at home and they're concerned about it, it gives you something to be able to offer as far as options for them to be able to consider as they go through the whole situation. Also, flashlights. While we're talking about nightstands, have a flashlight on your nightstand. My nightstand at night, I've got a handheld flashlight, my gun in a holster, and my cell phone plugged in on the nightstand there. Well, Gary and I were at Lake Conroe by the dam. There's a gun range up there. We were doing a seminar there. This guy raised his hand and said, 4 things. I said, oh, okay, what's that? He said, glasses. He said, I can't see 10 feet in front. I said, okay, 4 things. All right, glasses on there. But have a handheld light. You must, before I'm going to grab that gun and I'm going to charge deadly force downrange, I've got to be able to identify what that is that I'm firing that deadly force at. It could be your son busting curfew late at night. It could be a drunken neighbor that stumbled into the wrong home. It wasn't my case, but it was in the office in the homicide division while I was there. This husband and wife had a plan. And their plan was, if their intrusion alarm went off, wife would roll out of bed and she was on the phone, 911, getting them on the phone. He was going to grab his gun off his nightstand and challenge in the home wherever that threat might be coming from. Well, sure enough, it happened. Their intrusion alarm did go off. He got his gun, went into the hallway, and at the top of the stairs, remember in that tactically good position, a threat was coming up, what he perceived a threat coming up the stairwell. He stepped out and he fired 1 time and shot the threat in the chest. His 17-year-old son down the hall, the dog started whining and needed to go outside. The 17-year-old went downstairs, opened the back door, the intrusion alarm went off. The dog went out and did its business. He closed the door and started up the stairs, and his dad shot and killed him. Because he didn't identify that threat, first and foremost. You've got to be able to do that. Now, a flashlight is a great defensive tactic weapon because you can defend yourself real well with what you see. I pointed over there, bad guy. But there's techniques on how you can do that. You can look them up and do them. The 2 that we use at our gun range that we coach the guys up on is one's called the over and under gun, flashlight here, and it's a very stable platform. The other is what's called the FBI. Single-handed, again, I'm left-handed gun here. Flashlight way out to the side, away from your body. Reason being is you have what's called light shooters. If I light this light up, well, I made myself a target because bad guy knows where I am because I just lit up where I was. Well, there's techniques called getting off the X. You go dark, off the X, re-engage, stuff like that. There's techniques, so you can look them up. But there are good defendable ways and are good assets for us to defend ourselves with by having that flashlight and being able to do that. But, man, have that flashlight. It's so, so important. Also, first aid. Basic first aid is a great asset to have because the first aid you learn may be used on a family member. You know, just having basic first aid information, how to apply a tourniquet, do CPR, how to stop a heavy bleeder, you know, the ability to be able to pack a wound with gauze to be able to slow down or stop a heavy breather, the Heimlich, you know, these types of things are very important to have just a grasp on. You know, it can be a fundamental grasp, but at least some that you know how to perform these because, again, they may be used on family members out there, and having some ability to be able to do that is a huge, huge plus for you to be able to be able to have. The second question we get this all the time as well, is what is the best weapon to use to defend your family with? That is the weapon that you practice and train with. That's the one you want to use to protect your family with. There's nothing wrong with having 95 guns in your gun safe, like Gary. Having that, there's nothing wrong with that. But there's going to be that one gun. He has it, and there's going to be that one that you have. That is going to be the gun you're going to have in your holster, that you're going to conceal carry, the one you're going to have on your nightstand or in your purse. Whatever that might be, that's the one you want to practice with, the one you want to train with is that particular weapon. And don't listen to the gun range. If you go to the gun range, they're going to tell you right off the bat, 12-gauge shotgun's the best weapon out there to defend your family with. Well, it is. It's a really, really good weapon to defend your family with. I will tell you this also. In a darkened warehouse in the middle of downtown Houston at 3 a.m. in the morning, and you open that door and you just stick your hand in and you rack a shell into that shotgun, it has a universal language. I don't care what country you're from. You know what's fixing to follow in that. We've had surrenders. Okay, I'm coming out. That and a barking canine dog will help them expedite their exit out of that building. But that is, a shotgun's great because you don't have to aim a shotgun. You just point it in that direction and pull the trigger. But there are some training techniques, and there also are, depending on your home situation, considerations as well with over-penetration. You may have to consider over-penetration in a situation like that to your neighbor. Now, if your neighbor's 6 acres away, God bless you, first of all, and if you don't have to worry about those kinds of things. But if they're, in close proximity to you, AR, same way, you have to really be concerned about over-penetration and how that could impact your neighbors next door or anything like that. So take that into account as well. AR is a great one as well, but if you don't take it off safe and put it on to fire, you're going to pull that trigger all day and nothing's going to happen. It takes a different training technique to be able to advance that skill set as well. But they're both of them really good home defense weapons. Now, I forgot to mention, I'll mention it now, the difference between cover and concealment. Cover, if you grab cover, cover will stop a bullet. That's the design. That's what's called cover. Big concrete pillar at the mall. You get in behind that, that will stop a bullet from coming in and take a big oak tree. Same thing. You're behind it. It's going to stop a bullet from advancing through and into you. Concealment's just the opposite. Bad guys coming through your house, you jump real quickly behind the couch, lay down behind the couch. Well, the couch is not going to stop a bullet, but it will conceal you from the view of the bad guy in a situation like that. Cover versus concealment. That's the difference. I forgot to mention that earlier. Also, you cannot booby trap your home. Punji sticks and fortifying with electrical charge your doorknob on your house are no-nos. You can't charge them up with your neighbor that comes over and asks you for a cup of sugar. You can't light their day up when they grab that doorknob on something like that. It's illegal to do. You can't do that in that situation. Also, someone in your backyard, this is our legal staff, the attorneys, I've heard them say this, and I bring this up all the time because it's so important. Someone in your backyard late at night is a prowler trespasser. Keep that in mind. That same person goes to your shed, busts your lock, and reaches into your shed and takes your leaf blower. They are a thief at that point. What you have to take into account is crimes against property, crimes against people. There's a different range of punishment for both of them. A thief is punished totally different than the guy that kicks in your door and steps over the threshold into your home. Crimes against people. He comes to your back door, he starts rattling it, he rattles it enough, he shakes it free and he steps in. He's now stepped into a totally different thing. The use of deadly force in crimes against property versus crimes against people, they have advised be very, very careful of using deadly force in that crimes against property because juries, and they've seen it and they tell us this, say, well, you had insurance for that. Why did you have to use deadly force to stop that guy from taking your leaf blower? That's what you have insurance for. This is the mindset of the people that may be in court determining whether you are guilty or not guilty. That's their mindset. Now, I've got some good news for you. That's in Harris County. So, deal's off. Y'all don't have to deal with that part of it. But that was what the attorneys were telling us down in Harris County. And we were talking about earlier about a homicide case that we had in Harris County. Thank heaven y'all are here and not in Harris County, because it got rough even as investigators down there. And that was years ago. God only knows how bad it is now down there with some of the jury pool that are, let's just say they're not real 2A friendly by any stretch of the imagination. Poverty is not a lack of wealth. Poverty is a lack of hope. Without a plan, we are destined to fail. We must put together a plan. Now, that's all I've got. It's now your turn with your questions. Again, just about anything, either active shooter or situational awareness that you would like to ask about, please do. I'll be glad to answer any of them. And those of them that I don't know, I'll make something up. No, I'm just kidding you. We'll figure out how we can answer the best we can. But please don't hesitate. Remember, your questions stir that conversation. Yes, sir, brother. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. No, you still have the ability to use, the state of Texas gives you the right to use deadly force to defend your property at night. What the attorneys are saying, though, is be very, very careful, because the state gives you the right and you can go into court with that right, but there are going to be 12 people that are sitting on that jury out there that may not see it the same way, and they're the ones that are rendering judgment as to whether you're walking out or not. And so they are like, you're right, you do. State of Texas does allow you that. And the one in particular that I remember was a guy was stealing a truck. He had already broke the column. He was starting the truck. He was 16 years old, and the guy shot him in the chest and killed him inside the truck at night, stealing his property. And it went to court. And it didn't fare well. It didn't fare well because the jury, one of the jurors in particular, after the case, when they always ask questions as to why you came up with this after the jury, they're summoned in the pool, they ask those questions, and she said, that's why he had insurance. Why do you have to kill him? So keep that in mind as you go through. Let me tell you another thing. As a homicide investigator, I can tell you, your whole world goes upside down if you're involved in a homicide or a serious bodily injury case, because you're constantly going to court. You're being summoned every time evidence is introduced. It's just constantly going back and forth into court. I've seen divorces. I've seen loss of jobs, all these different things that you need to take into account. One of the cases I handled, now this probably tell you how long ago this was, but this guy had left his garage door open. And this thief went in and took his daughter's 10-speed bicycle and took off running down the street with it. This guy heard it. He went out in the front yard. As the guy was running down the street, he let loose with 3 rounds. And one of those rounds struck a 10-year-old through the leg, in and out. Thank heavens she survived. But that guy went from victim to suspect in a matter of a moment, or something like that. And so, yeah, you're right. The state of Texas does give you the ability. Again, how would you like to be having 12 jurors over there determining whether you're walking or not, and your crime, that 8-year-old that was TP in your house, all of a sudden you know, man, just common sense and good judgment. And always remember this, that yes, we tell people the criminal side's the one that can put you in the penitentiary. but the civil side's the one that can put you in bankruptcy court too. You always have to weigh, okay, I beat it. I get no bill by the grand jury, but does that stop the procedure from going forward? And because guilt or innocence in a criminal proceeding, the threshold's high. It should be. Guilt or innocence in a civil proceeding is very, very low, which means the same case that you are found no bill by the grand jury, you are now drug into a wrongful death lawsuit on the civil side. Now, if you're a member with us, God bless you. Yep, that was it. Yes, you're right. We do cover you on both. Yes, yep, sure do. Yeah. Two different ranges of sentencing. Way over here on this side, it's, 25 to life on that other side as well. Questions? Yes. We have independent programmed attorneys that we use. They're not. We're a company. We conduct or have independent programmed attorneys that we have that are with us. I'm going to give them a plug because one of the attorneys, we were doing a seminar and he told Gary and I this. This was about 2 months ago. In our area here, of which we're in a 5-county region, which y'all are in as well, Harris County, all the way up through here, in this 5-county region, their law firm has been recognized nationally as the finest of dealing with what they're doing in types of crime that they are litigating in court. Their law firm has. So it was a big plus for it. But the way it works, the way our program works is, let's say, for instance, you're involved in you live in the Woodlands, Texas, and you shoot a guy in your backyard. The way the process goes from there, obviously, and I forgot to bring this up. I just thought of it. 911. All of us now realize that 911 is a recorded line, right? Everybody knows now that when you call 911, 911 operator, how can I help? Well, I was injured with the department. I had to spend, it's like clock in penitentiary. I had to spend time at 911 as an operator. I was that guy on the 911 operator. Okay. Well, what we found out while there is most people believe when they answer 911 operator that the recording begins. Nope. When it starts ringing that it begins to record. So you and your spouse are sitting right there. You dial 911, it starts to ring, and you go, man, babe, I wish I hadn't shot that guy. Guess what just got recorded and what got covered in that 911 call? So please keep that in mind. Lots going on, a lot of things are happening, but that's something to consider as you go through. How it happens. 911, you get on the line, you want to get in and you want to get in, you want to get out, because it is a recorded line. You don't want to go into a whole lot of detail. Let me tell you what happens on those scenes. You can imagine your adrenaline pumps way up here in a situation like that. This is what happens. It's called an excited utterance for a reason. You are really, really going, and all of a sudden now you're speaking to 911. And the reason you want to get in and out is twofold. First of all, you don't want to there's been a shooting. There's a man down in my backyard. I need an ambulance. I'm wearing a white t-shirt, blue jeans, and a ball cap. My name is Steve. I'm at 123 ABC Street. By giving that information, you put in play. Now, there's some other things that can be added that you may want to add, or you may want, but to me, that gets them. And again, I took those calls for 4 months. I've heard a bunch of them. But what you have done at that point, you put in motion everything that needs to start coming your way. And folks, I believe this is absolutely what Texas Law Shield does best for their members, is at that point you need to hang up. You need to hang up. Because on the back of your membership card in red, or now on your phone, you have an emergency number. You hit that number, or you call that number that's on the back of your membership card, you're speaking to one of our attorneys. There's a gap between when you hang up with 911 and when the troops arrive. Having that gap filled with that conversation with your attorney, they're going to tell you one thing, and it's going to bring you from here down to there. And they're going to tell you, whatever you do, don't say anything until I get there. Let you and I talk, then we'll make a statement, because here's why. Unlike when I was there, now that officer arrives on the scene and comes up to you and says, hey, what happened out there? They have these things called body cameras. And these body cameras are recording everything you're saying, audio and video, on that scene. Guess what gets introduced as evidence in your trial 2 years from now? Having that attorney there to tell you, whoa, pump the brakes, pull the reins back, get your feet on the ground before law enforcement or medical attention arrives out there is a huge, huge asset to have. Because remember, this is what happens on those scenes out there. I've seen it happen many, many times. So, did that answer your question? Yeah, you can think of, or, I don't feel safe. Whatever you need to get off that phone to 911, you can come up with, or I need to check on family members, hang up, and get onto that line. Now, with that being said, right, yeah, you can absolutely. Yeah, yeah. I invoke. Yeah, yeah. You can, by just remaining silent, it doesn't invoke the Miranda. Yeah, yeah. No, they're independent programmed attorneys that work for a firm that's. I mean, we're not one. Yes, sir. And in the Woodlands, Texas, what they're going to do is after they give you that advice over the phone, they are going to find the closest independent programmed attorney to where your incident is and dispatch them. They're all about response time. They want to get a attorney on the ground out there because they know as police officers, they're wanting this system to go forward quickly, and pieces are coming together, and they want to be part of that pieces. I can tell you what happens is we used to call it the dog and pony show because, I mean, you go through what's called a reenactment where it's you and your attorney, I hope, and homicide's there, the DA's office is there, the grand juror, I can't remember their name, it's whoever's in charge of it, and all of a sudden you're walking through and each one of us are throwing questions at you. Having that attorney right here on your shoulder, not allowing you to do that, doesn't get you upside down in an investigation where you've got to walk back something that was captured 2 years from now when you go to court in a situation like that. Great asset to have. Great question. Yes, sir. You can go ahead and come clean. We're inside the church. You've been how many times behind? Come on. Yeah, there. All right. All right. I will tell you what the attorneys tell us. Every case is different. Yeah. But what they will say is we've won a whole lot more than we've ever lost. Most of them are won in the grand jury. Remember what they said, that attorney a 2 or 3 months ago, they were recognized as one of the best. And you don't get there, it's kind of like Peyton Manning. You don't get to that, that top unless you've thrown a lot of touchdowns. They've thrown a lot of touchdowns. And we're in that 5-county region. And here's another thing. I mean, you go into court, you sit down at that table, and you've got everything on the line. Your attorney comes in and sits down next to you, and the first thing out of his mouth is, so this is what a courtroom looks like. And that's not real reassuring. You kind of want one of those been there, done that. With our firm, these are vetted, experienced, programmed attorneys that have been through a vetting process. Most of them are ex-assistant DAs. In other words, they've been in court before, they've tried cases before. They are chosen for this type of coverage, and our company vets them to come through. Yes, sir. I would imagine probably in College Station. Yeah. Yeah. Right. Right. I do know for a fact there's two of them in Conroe, which cuts the drive 30 minutes. Yeah. Yeah. It cuts. Yeah. Yeah. There's not much heading up here. Yeah. But I would, because of the proximity being kind of right in the middle there, as Gary mentioned, there's 60 alone in just Texas. Now, I will tell you that, probably a whole bunch of those are in the Houston, Dallas, San Antonio, Austin area because of just the proximity of the people in that alone. 280 nationwide. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. Yes, yeah, it's different school. Yeah, 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 they do. Same way with juvenile. You know, juvenile attorneys are vetted differently and go to, different set. We have that availability if that is something that it's an add-on to your membership that you can add on, and that's minor children coverage. And that applies for your children, or if you are the custodial parent of your children's children, also applies. Well, that's what Gary said. The 60, yeah, the 60 here in Texas, correct, Gary? 10, 10 out of the main corporate office in Houston. Remember the 60 we're talking about? Probably again a large proximity is there. Yeah. Questions? You guys have throw a question out there. Anything? You guys? Okay. Nothing? Ah. Uh-huh. Yeah. Well, when we would take classes at the police academy out there, they would call every class that we took basic handgun, basic shotgun, for that reason. Now, I will tell you, taking those classes, they're anything but basic. But on paper, they were basic. Same thing through there as you go through with some. Now, what I would tell you is if you have your weapon and you have a magazine in that weapon that is engraved, we shoot them all, I don't care what, or something like that, we kill them and grill them, or something on the side of your AR rifle or something like that, guess what's going to get introduced as evidence? Yeah. No, it's still rolling. Absolutely it was. Yeah. Uh, Gary? I have one on mine too. Yeah. Well, remember years ago they used to call them the cop killer bullets that they came out? Yeah. The black talons or talons, yeah. Yeah, that were able to go through our vests and stuff like that. Yeah. 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 And everybody's hands are legal weapons. Everyone. It's called choking. You can use them as a weapon. Yeah, you ought to. Yeah. No, realize in a civil proceeding, any of this stuff can be introduced. You know, they're going for the jugular. I mean, they'll introduce any and everything. In a criminal proceeding, it's got to be introduced as evidence, and the judge has to deem whether it's relevant or not. In a civil proceeding, remember that threshold, way down there. So, no, you don't. Yeah. Yeah. Questions? Gary B., I believe that's it. Thank y'all very much. I appreciate it. If you have further questions and you just want to chat, be in the back with you. And thank y'all very much. And Gary, appreciate it.